You are no assassin, Aldhelm cautioned Osrith, as she readied an available horse. His face was grave, still and serious, and he placed his hand over Osrith's, as she pulled the bridle over the horse's face. This black beast has been the best she had ridden since Finno Liontag had taught her to ride, or rather, not fall off, through the lands of Stirling. May I formally now decline your offer of auxiliary captain, and perhaps you can give it to one who deserves it? Osrith bit back the words, trying not to let her emotions spill out. How could he? After everything she had done for the Kingdom of Mercia? It is a job to do, she justified, making sure she acted well enough so that she could leave with dignity. It is how I get to be in a place I want to be. A consolation reward for failing to reach Alba, she told herself. It is how I cement my place here. Aldhelm shook his head, and placed his other hand on her arm, his eyes on hers. Osrith, you have a place here, in perpetuity. His voice was low, steady. You are more loyal to Mercia than ever anyone could be. He glanced at the gate, as wisps of snow began to sprinkle down onto the courtyard. I wonder how it could be so. Perhaps you came from here, before you were Lackland? Perhaps, Osrith replied, as she leapt onto the horse. No saddle for her, it made staying in all the worse and found the old lie on her tongue. Though I remember my own family when we were in Alba, before the Norse murdered them. No doubt, Eardwulf will be able to tell me, and to make up many lies about me. She bent her head to Aldhelm. Stay, Osrith, I will go alone, Aldhelm insisted. But Osrith shook her head. And be shown to be a fool by that man? It is not as if I haven't killed a woman before, she added, her horse's head rocking backwards and forwards, anticipating leaving. Osrith hadn't, unless there had been women amongst the Norse and Danes she had ever fought. How could he think I could harm his sister? Aldhelm did not answer at first. Instead, he pulled himself up on his own horse, his beard as brown as the bay's own coat. They got a good 10 miles on the way to Oxford before Aldhelm slowed. It is needless to say to you that you play a very dangerous game for yourself being a warrior, Aldhelm began. And now, because of this, you have been tricked into the assassination of Ethelred's wife by the man himself. Tricked? Osrith asked. It is my guess. He asked you to do it, first, before he found a more convenient truce. Aldhelm's horse shifted its hoofs, and Osrith noticed because the man had said nothing. It could have been worse, I suppose, Aldhelm continued. He has ... appetites. Osrith scoffed. Just because I have a cunt, I am not begging for it to be filled by a cock. Aldhelm said nothing, just pinked a little at the top of his sideburn cheeks. They rode on, and winter bustled snowflakes at them. They would go to Gloucester first, and then north, to Saltwick. He is greatly annoyed by his defeat at Kenwy, Aldhelm said, at length, when they had ridden for about an hour in silence. Osrith had been brooding on the task, and wondering how ironic it was that she had spent so many hours, when she was at Winchester dreaming of ways of dispatching Alfred's daughter, when now she couldn't think of a single decent way to do it. Perhaps there were no decent ways. The road gave way to countryside as they skirted the city of Gloucester, and Aldhelm told Osrith how, as an independent mercenary, Ethelred had chosen to invade the northern lands of Wales, and how he had been defeated and had to ask the southern kingdoms for help. They, in turn, begged for assistance from Alfred. So, in effect, the long-held desire to expand beyond Offa's had failed and Ethelred had become beholden to his father-in-law. In addition, Ethelfled had chosen to live in her estate at Saltwick. From there, she could oversee the northwestern interests of Mercia, including incursions beyond Watling Street and reclaiming territory. So Ethelred was looking east. The reeve of the city will show us somewhere we can stay for the night, Aldhelm assured her, but he seemed disappointed to be shown the stables. At least the breath of the animals always Osrith feel warm on cold nights, and she readily climbed the loft stairs. Perhaps there is somewhere else we can go, Aldhelm said, looking around the straw-strewn loft with disdain. Other than turn the steward's family out of their beds, you mean? Aldhelm replied. It will do. We are only here for one night, not for a diplomatic meeting with the earldoman. He pushed himself along away from the hatch, and hung the lantern above them. It will be good to be discreet. Osrith watched as Old Helm pulled blankets from his pack and fashioned one into a pillow before putting his head upon it. Osrith pulled her cloak around herself and turned with her back towards him. How would she do it? To challenge Ethelfled to a fight and killing her would draw too much attention. In her sleep. That had particular advantages, and Osrith was certainly stronger than the lady. She could hold down a cushion to her face. Or slit her throat. Osrith had never had the chance to do this, and she was not sure that was the best route. If she could not pull it off effectively, then it would be too much of a blunder. Ethelred would certainly send more guards, maybe on the pretext of further guards for the Lady of Mercia, only to discover she was dead. Osrith needed to leave Ethelfled in a position she could be found, rather than disappeared, or dead in a fire, but not too obviously murdered, if it could be seen to be an accident. Osrith's mind worked on. An accident held a certain appeal. The tragedy of the Lady of the Mersons ran better off the lips of the story makers than dread murder. But how could she stage an accident? You do not have to do this. Osrith turned in Old Helm's direction in the darkness, for the lamp was nearly burned out. She could hear his breathing in the coldness of the stable loft. And if I don't, I have failed, she replied. A long ago memory of her and Domhnall of the Ui Neil talking in a loft similar to this filled her mind. Then, they had wandered the Glen of Orkney, and the Morrigan had come and rinsed her soul by her very presence. No Morrigan here, though they were close to Cymric lands. The Morrigan seemed to be strongest in the north, Osrith had noticed. Do you have any other ideas than my going through with it? In the semi-darkness, Osrith turned in his direction. Old Helm reached out and touched her hand. It was warm. I do not know. I cannot understand your choice. Then you must know I am in a position that gives me few choices, Osrith replied, then pulled herself up to a sitting position. I can do it. I do not want you to be made into a murderer. Old Helm shifted in the straw. We could tell her, and let her escape. Then you have no need to be a murderer yourself, Lord. Tell her and let her escape, Old Helm repeated. That is the most palatable. Osrith stared into the darkness as the course of action now decided settled between them. So, tell me, why do you want her killed? Why did you not say no? My country needs a leader. It is being enveloped by Wessex, and Ethelred is no more than a puppet to Alfred after his Welsh disaster. He drew his hand back from Osrith and lay down. Mercia is all I have, he added. I have been lucky to still remain a lord under Ethelred, after everything. He decides so much on whims and feelings. His voice trailed off in the darkness. And then Osrith leaned up, searching for Old Helm's hand in the darkness. When she found it, she searched for the other, pushing her fingers through his as she leaned upwards, to kiss him. Old Helm did not respond as she pressed her lips to his. So Osrith leaned over him, her body over his, taking his face in her hands, her palms touching his beard. It was too dark to see his reaction, and Osrith kissing the man again, and deeper and more intensely when she felt him responding. He let out a sigh before taking her hands from his face, and he pushed Osrith back, folding her hands together, and pushing them away from him. Osrith, he said slowly and deliberately, while I would with no hesitation acquiesce to your offer, Old Helm continued, looking at her with his still, intense fixed look that he gave when he was being serious, and believe me, I would desire you. I believe that down that path would only lead to unhappiness for us both. Then more softly, patting her shoulder, added, I value our friendship, which could be lost. Would not be helped by that. Old Helm leaned away from her. Now, if you will excuse me, I will leave you to rest. But he did not turn away from her immediately, for Osrith had had time as she listened to formulate the next words she was going to say, and said them quickly as she saw Old Helm get to his feet. As we are friends, then I would prefer my friend to stay by me this night. She nodded and reached up to pull his hand. Old Helm sat back down next to her. I promise not to kiss you again. Now I see what threat Earnulf thought you would be to his sister, he quipped, and they both laughed. You worry about your task. Aldhelm asked, when he was lying next to Osrith bundled up in his blankets as she was her cloak. Not the task itself. She will be easy to dispatch. Just the aftermath. Is Ethliard prepared for that? Is he prepared that by removing Alfred's daughter in Mercia the repercussions? In the darkness, Osrith felt Aldhelm shuffle nearer to her, and she was grateful for his warmth, for it was becoming a cold night. I think not. I think her role is central to everything. My parents were killed by Danes not far from Tamworth. They are a scourge to us and our way of life. Then we must have a plan, Osrith replied. It must appear that I have been thwarted not because I could not do it, but because she got wind of danger and fled. They lay in silence for a while. Osrith could hear Aldhelm breathing, but it wasn't the slowness of slumber. He wasn't going to sleep. May I assure you, it is not because I do not find you an attractive woman, Aldhelm said, as if the idea had been on his mind all that time. I just do not feel that it would be the right course for us to undertake. Osrith may have exhaled a little too loudly, because Aldhelm continued to explain further. Osrith's heart sank. It was clear he didn't want to. Why prolong the justification? But Aldhelm was doing just that, and she listened to him in silence. There is another reason I would not wish to lie with you, Osrith, Aldhelm explained, quietly. I believe your heart is with someone else. When Osrith said nothing, Aldhelm prompted. I have seen the way you look at the Lord Utard, for example. Very perceptive, Osrith thought, and then aloud said, if I wish it, it can no more come true. My life does not really shout domesticity. But no, the Lord Utard, traitor to Alfred and outlaw of Wessex, no, not in a million years. I mean, Uke. She made a noise like a pig getting a surprise poke by the farmer, and Aldhelm laughed. Not the Lord Utard. But someone? When Osrith did not answer, Aldhelm added, I wonder why you are so hard on yourself. Because after this, I must go, Lord Aldhelm, Osrith replied, admitting more to her commander than she had dared to admit to her own brain. Please, not Lord, not to you, Osrith. And, where must you go that Mercia cannot accommodate you? Because of what Earnulf said, she clarified, not answering his question. I do not know where I come from, but he is the sort of man who will find something, and I will be shipped off to somewhere. If he has no evidence I came from here or from there, set me up, have it prearranged. Osrith felt herself losing her temper a little, and she forced herself to calm down. What was it Eric Thurgilson said? Meet defeat and success in the same way? It will not come to that, Aldhelm sought to reassure her. You are Ethliard's oath-taker, and are of Mercia. You are auxiliary captain, should you wish to change your mind on that one. I won't. And I would not have suggested THSD if I thought you couldn't do that role. Those squads of men are vital to our defences. Will you at least come back to Aylesbury first? And Osrith's heart melted a little more. A humanitarian was a rare thing in the world. Because it's you who has asked, Aldhelm. Yes, Osrith agreed. So, let us discuss how we attempt to feign taking the life of the Lady of the Mersons. Who was there? Did she get away before we arrived? Did she slip away in our presence? And if she did, how? What preparations had she made? Did they go somewhere pre-planned? Near? Far? On the straw, Osrith turned over to his direction, and laid a hand on his arm. Osrith. May I say what a good man you are, Osrith said, then tucked her hand away. If you knew me, Osrith, you would not believe so, Aldhelm replied. Perhaps you too should not be so hard on yourself, Aldhelm, she said, and patted his hand once more, before they talked into the night about how to stage a failed assassination of the Lady of the Mersons. 888888888. Winchelcombe. The Lady Ethelfled was pacing her study, her sword not yet sheathed. Osrith noticed. I will send word I am to be helped. Those nuns have a keep. I will be quite safe. Quite safe, unless you undergo a siege, Aldhelm suggested. The land is narrow, and there is little ground to run to, should you need to. And who do you think will chase me to a nunnery to murder me, Lord Aldhelm? Perhaps the same man who sent us? Osrith was not known for subtlety, and Ethelfled was affronted by her bluntness. "Ah yes, my husband," Ethelfled replied, giving Osrith a shriveling look, which had absolutely no effect on her whatsoever. "So, why did you come?" she asked Aldhelm, still threatening him with her sword. "Too flimsy," Osrith thought, as she scrutinized the steel. "Fine for close combat, but put that in the way of an axe and it will become an undersized seax. My husband's hound. He may not kill you." Osrith growled at Ethelfled, offended on Aldhelm's behalf. How dare she dismiss him like that? "I may yet, I am every bit a mercenary as the Lord Aldhelm." Ethelfled turned her pale brown eyes disdainfully to Osrith. "My husband's Gaelish bitch." With a thrrrm, Buet was out and the lady's sword was on the floor. She gave an outraged look at Osrith. "Though I do not like the way he treats you, the law of Mercia says he is king," Osrith reminded her. Ethelfled looked at her sharply. "Or as close to king as possible." Osrith picked up some silver coins which were on Ethelfled's desk, holding one out to her. "Your father ruled next to Ceolwulf. Mercia knows that Wessex would like to rule it and fears for its safety. You have Elfwin. She could be queen after you both. You fight well. She could be taught by you. Mercia would be happy." But Ethelfled was not. "What you say is an outrage," she stormed. But stopped, when Osrith raised Buet again. "Then take my sword from me and strike my head from my shoulders." "Been," Osrith offered, her heart sinking when she saw Aldhelm bridle. "May I say," Aldhelm interjected, pushing away Osrith's sword. "I have come to realize that the land would be poorer without the Lady of the Mercens," Aldhelm told her, as Osrith stood motionless, only her sword blade vibrating very slightly in front of her. "I will accompany you to this monastery," Osrith offered. "Why must I come with you?" "Why must I come with you, you say? You have to escape and survive your escape." Mocking laughter entered Osrith's voice added, "And you never will survive with a pot-cooled blade and 2 maid-servants. You are nothing but a—" But Ethelfled broke off when Osrith's sword point traced a line over her neck. "I can kill you. I would, if I could." And as quick as she had removed Buet, Osrith put away her blade. "And I will, if you let down this country of mine." "It is adopted by you," Ethelfled retorted. "And by you, whose loyalty is more honorable. Given or taken?" Osrith pointed to the sleeping girl. "Elfwin would have to be protected. She is the most important thing now." Osrith was aware of Aldhelm watching the two of them, and listening, seemingly at a loss as to whether to intervene or not. "Ethelred is her father, no matter what you think," Ethelfled protested. "What I think is what I know. You confided in me once," Osrith reminded her, and the lady's eyes told her Ethelfled knew. "You were pregnant before you ever met Eric." Osrith watched her flinch. Then, Ethelfled leaned past Osrith as if she were no more than a roof pillar and called to her servant. "Go to Utad, tell him I am here," Ethelfled instructed. But Osrith dashed the note from the maid's surprised fingers. "If you want that message delivered, you must find another way. Tell her, for she will not believe me." Osrith said the last part to Aldhelm, who stepped towards Ethelfled and bowed his head. "It is true, lady. Utad chose to attack your father and, as such, made himself an outlaw to Wessex." Osrith was gratified when she heard an intake of breath from the lady and she leaned closer to Ethelfled. "Who can you trust in Winchester?" Ethelfled stared at her for a good few minutes, before bending to her desk and writing another letter. When she had finished, the lady sealed it in wax and then wrote another, called her servant to her, bending low to her ear. "Very good, my lady," the servant said, accepting the letters, and hurried from the room. Ethelfled then busied herself collecting things that she needed. "No time," Osrith shouted. "Get what you need, and go. If we have been sent to do this to you, Ethelfled, others may be sent to cause harm to your daughter, or ensure we have been successful." Osrith gripped her arm to make her listen when Ethelfled began to shovel papers into bags. "Food, blankets, horses. They are crucial, everything else can wait." Finally, Ethelfled shook Osrith free, and she went to wake up Elfwin. It failed because of me. Aldhelm counseled Osrith as they left Ethelfled to make her plans to flee. That is what we will convey. Me he will forgive. He will kill you. Aldhelm, thank you, Osrith said, and she leaned up to kiss his cheek. He nodded, graciously. As they rode away, as the sun began to rise, Osrith turned to her commander as he said, he needs a purpose. Ethelred. Alfred dictates all the opportunities now. Then perhaps you can suggest this, Osrith replied, and began to explain a possible outlet to keep Ethelred from boredom. When she had finished, she looked across to the serious Aldhelm. So? Osrith asked. What do you think? I think it is a good plan, Osrith. Aldhelm nodded. Saint Oswald would certainly bring spirituality back to a broken Mercia. And when Osrith made to go, he made sure he was smiling when she turned round, questioningly. I must ensure she has left safely, then I will catch you up. You are sure of the way? Osrith nodded to a single-track road ahead of them. That way? Aldhelm nodded. And so Osrith took the track, which was indeed the correct way back to Oxford, and then Aylesbury. But not the way she took it, for she ended up on a different part of the Fossway, and it wasn't until dusk came that Osrith realized that she must have gone wrong. For there was Watling Street in front of her, which should not be there if she had gone due east. Instead, she must have gone northeast, which meant she was near High Cross again, and close to where she had been, usurping her brother's protection. Utid was no longer anywhere near the now, which was very unfortunate for Osrith.